Hello Mzansi, welcome to another episode in our Farmer Mentor series brought to you by Farmers Inside Track. My name is Duncan Masiwa and I'm your host for this episode. Now, as you know, we introduce you to some of the most innovative and forward-thinking farmers in the agricultural sector. And my next guest is just as the many others that I've introduced you to. Dean Barnard, a crop farmer from George at the Western Cape, has been working alongside his father on Waboomskraal farm for 19 years, taking over operations 8 years ago. The family farm, Oppie Plaas Boerdery, is one of only 7 hop farms in Africa, exclusively supplying Castle and Castle Lite. Now, under Barnard's leadership, the farm also produces plums, achieving remarkable yields. Since taking the reins, he has driven innovation with new irrigation technology and expanded their orchards and hops production. Let's hear from Barnard about his passion for farming and his commitment to sustainable practices that he has implemented on their farm, Oppie Plaas Boerdery. Dean, welcome to Farmers Inside Track. It's definitely lovely chatting with you.
Hi Duncan, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Definitely. What I didn't say in my intro is that you are also an award winner, recently being the Agri Western Cape Santam Young Farmer of the Year award.
Yes, that's correct.
That must have been quite an honor for you.
Definitely, it's a big honor and privilege to be the Young Farmer of Agri Western Cape. And at the moment, I'm enjoying every moment to be the ambassador for young farmers out in the Western Cape and also telling them my stories. It's really a privilege to do it and big honor.
When I read a bit about your story, and we'll get into detail into it in a bit. But when I read your story, I knew that you are exactly the kind of farmer that I want to introduce to the farmers that listen to our podcast, specifically the Farmer Mentor series. Hopefully they'll be able to walk away from this conversation inspired to implement some of the strategies that you implement on your farm, wherever they are, whatever corner of South Africa. But for those who might not know you, they've never heard who Dean is and what he does. Let's start at the beginning. What exactly do you farm and how did you get started in the agricultural sector?
We farm with hops and we've got plums and pecan-nuts and then some almonds on the farm at the moment. I started farming with my dad 19 years ago. Before that, I was in Oakdale Agricultural High School in Riversdale. So from young age, I wanted to farm and my dad gave me the opportunity to start farming with him. That is where we started off 19 years back, started farming with him. And 2019, he gave me the opportunity to buy into the farm. And we started farming together 50-50%. And we try to do everything to the best of our ability and work also with nature.
Tell me a bit about that. I suppose it's not taking over, but it's sort of being more hands-on on the farm because your dad is pretty much still involved, it sounds to me, in the business. What was that like stepping into leadership on the farm? All of a sudden, you are changing traditional farming methods and exploring modern methods of agriculture. That couldn't have been an easy thing with your dad.
We've actually got a very good working relationship, me and my dad. And from a young age, he always taught us, you must stay with the nature, work with nature, not against it. That is one of the biggest things when I took over that I brought with me. What is nice is we talk about everything on the farm. If there's big discussions on the farm, we also just have a meeting about it. And then I will tell him, listen, can't we do this or that on the farm? And he will say, yes, you think it's good, or can't we do it that way? And I must say that makes it actually very nice that we've got the open relationship with each other. And I still get the support from him, the same that I got when I got onto the farm. So that is a massive privilege for me to farm with him. Yeah, at the beginning it was hard to take over. And I think the big thing is when you take over, before you take over, you're already half in charge and your fathers give you more responsibilities. And at a certain point, when you take over, you've always got this little thing in the back of your head. Yes, like, are we going to make it? I'm now in charge, but now I also have responsibilities. All the loans have to be paid back and maintenance must be 100%. So you've got a lot of things going in your back of your mind. And one day I just sat and said, listen, you have already done this. And it made it easier, and also with his help and support and from my mother and my wife, that makes a big, big difference. So I'm very blessed to farm with my dad. I would definitely tell other young farmers out there, if you can farm with your dad or with somebody, you must use the opportunity and work with them and not against them. That is definitely our recipe that worked on our farm.
I love that, sort of the same principle that you apply when it comes to your farming methods of working with nature and not against it, applying that same strategy with the people that you work with.
That's very, very important. You have to work with everyone, with all your workers, everything. And I always tell the guys, listen, we must have mutual respect for each other. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If I doesn't have respect for one of my workers, then they can't have respect for me. So working with them, and I think I've got one unbelievable team. One of my irrigation guys and one of my general workers, a lady that's going to the Prestige Agri Awards tomorrow. So, I hope really they can also get rewarded at that function because they definitely deserve it. And for me, I'm incredibly proud of them that they made it to the event. That's nice to have that type of relationship that you can nominate somebody and they go through that. That is really incredible. It's very nice for me.
It sounds to me that it's not just the farmer who gets to shine, but also the agri workers, sort of the engine behind it all that also get to shine. Looking at your farming portfolio, I understand that the focus of the farm before you had taken over had a specific focus, but then when you came in, you then started introducing new crops, that being plums and hops. Take us through that process, also looking at cost involved in that.
My father started with the hops I think he planted the first hops in 1983. We planted another couple of hectares. I think it was 5 hectares last year that we planted, and we did some irrigation on the hops. We go through to drip irrigation. We have some overheads and some micros that we use on the hops. So we did our first field with low flow drip. I think it's 750 milliliters per hour that we use. So I did some research around the drip irrigation. The big thing is it's also you have to look at with Eskom and everything that is a challenge in the agricultural. So at the end of the day on the one farm that we've got about 22, 23 hectares of hops, there we've got the 2 pumps is 67 kilowatt. And when we've changed it, take about 5 years, then we will only have some drip on that farm. Then we will have about 45 kilowatt. But the big difference is with the 67 kilowatt, we can only irrigate 3 hectares on one time. But with the drip, I can irrigate the whole farm with 45 kilowatt on one time. So that is the things that I brought in on the plum side. If you go and look at the cost on the hops, when you plant in a new field, you're looking about 350,000 rand per hectare if you have to buy everything from scratch. But you've got the ground and you've got some of the pumps already in your dams and you've got some main irrigation lines. So plants, you're looking about 10,000-15,000 rand per hectare. Your irrigation depends on which irrigation you're looking at, around 85,000 rand. If you look at how you're going to prepare your soil and also get your soil right with some lime and the stuff that you have to put in, looking about 25,000-30,000 rand per hectare, and your construction about 200,000 to 230,000 rand. On the plum side, you also look about 350,000 to 400,000 rand per hectare if you plant a new block. The trees you're looking about, say, 65,000 to 120,000 rand per hectare. It all depends on how wide your rows are, and so there's a lot of stuff that depends that the amount on your trees. Your construction, you're looking about 140,000. Your irrigation also between 60 and 85,000. And also your soil prep and all of that, also look for around 25,000-30,000 rand for that. About 3 years ago, I decided, it's going to cost us a lot of money for the guys to just carry a ladder from one tree to the other tree. If you go and look the amount of time that you're going to cut some branches and you have to prune the plums and when you're harvesting them, you're looking at just the time that the guys are moving their ladder in the field and climbing up to it. So they are not doing a physical work that time. You are using about 8 days a year that you use just for moving a ladder. I went in when we were starting some branches. I went in and I bought hedgers and we started hedging the trees. And it takes us about between 4 and 5 weeks to do that job with about 10 to 12 people. At the end, we did it with 3 guys in 10 days' time. So I could use those guys that was working on that field. I could use them for other work on the farm.
It seems like in order to do the kind of work that you not only require good financial backing, but also a solid team to go with it.
You will see in all my interviews that I have, I always talk about us, because for me, there's no thing as a boss, it's a team. That is for me very, very important. And that's why I said earlier, respect for each other is insane. You have to be a team player. You can't just be a boss the whole time. Certain times you have to take the lead, but the moment you put trust into your people, and then all the good stuff will come out. And you give that guy the confidence to say, yes, yes, we've got some confidence. I can feel there's confidence in me. And we've got certain guys on the farm. If something breaks on the farm, I get to them and say, listen, I already fixed it. So that is the type of confidence that I want into my people. I want to actually promote it and say, yes, you have to take responsibility for your job. It must be like your farm as well. You must almost work like it's yours. And that's for me very, very important. And that is why I will always talk about us as a team.
In agriculture or farming doesn't come without its challenges. Going back 8 years ago, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you first took over the farm, and how did you overcome them?
The first one, the stress if I'm going to make it. It was insane. Yes, it. Just that a bit of unbelief in yourself was definitely the biggest challenge, and you've got the big responsibility now. Take over a farm, and always that thing in the back of your mind, yes, are we going to make it? And the other thing is I took over in a time that it was quite dry in our area. So we've got some droughts and it was challenging. And we planted the plums 8 years ago, and the plant material that we received was very sick plants. And after 3 years, we wanted to take the plums out because of that. And about 2 years ago, we decided, no, we're going to take these plums out, because then it was COVID and it was that boat that was stuck in the Suez Canal. And one day my father's brother, he came here and said, listen, we told him we're going to take out the plums. And he said, listen, guys, I'm going to tell you tomorrow if you must take it out. I'm going to pray for you guys tonight. And the next morning he came to us and said, listen, God told me you guys must keep these plums. And, I'm glad we keep the plums. So it was a challenge. So the first, 5-6 years of the plums were really, it was difficult. We had some financial issues and quality issues, and we had to take out 2.5 hectares of that certain plum, and we have to put new ones. And so last year, after 8 years' time, I got my first harvest on one of the varieties. So you put in 8 years and you didn't get any money, and so you've got all that investment money and the rent going up and up. So it's actually, God told us we must keep the plums, and we're farming it like that. And I can tell you a lot of stories like, there was in that specific field, we've got a lot of baboons on the farm. And my dad, one morning, he opened the Bible and he read in the Bible that God will protect all our trees and our harvest. Till this day, and there haven't been baboons in that particular field. They come around everything, but not in that field. So I believe the angels are around it. You will also see we are quite religious about it.
Depending on who you ask, Dean, people often say that the biggest gambler is a farmer. But in your case, it seems like faith plays quite a big role in your farming practice and how you conduct business.
No, definitely, Duncan. When we start planting anything on a farm, the morning when the plants are ready to plant, or the trees, we will come as a group together. We open the farm every morning with prayer. When we start planting, we will ask God to put His blessing on every plant. And when I go and we throw some fertilizer or we spray something on the trees or on the hops, I will always ask God to put His blessing on it. When I drive through the farm, I will always thank God for what we've got, and thank you that the trees or the hops are looking so good, and that He may bless them. So that is for me a big part of the farming, and that is our biggest success story about the farm, is that we put a farm, it's God's farm, so we're farming it for Him.
I love that. I always say if you want to get to know a farmer, ask him or her about the challenges and the mistakes. You'll get to learn a lot about them. Talking about mistakes, Are there any specific mistakes that you've made in those early years of farming? What did you learn from it?
I would say the biggest mistake that we did is when we planted the plums, we should have first planted a couple of trial blocks of trial trees to see if it works in our area. We planted trees without any trials beforehand. And I would say if you want to do something new in your area or plant something like what we did in the plums, we are a hops area. We are the only plum farmers in Waboomskraal. We should have listened more to the farmers than to the technical guys. That's the biggest thing. You will always hear from farmer a true story. A guy that sells trees will always tell you, you will make this amount of money. And so that is the biggest mistake that I made on the farm. When we got the trees, the first lot of trees were sick. So we were desperate and we borrowed the money to plant the trees and we have to pay it back. And so we got other trees and they weren't also in a good shape and we planted them. We should have waited 1 year.
It sounds to me that you run an intensive farming operation where every decision that you make counts. What does intensive farming look like on your farm? And what advice can you share with small-scale growers?
It's quite intensive. If I look into intensive, I look at what is your running cost per variety or per hectare. And if you're looking at our farm, the lowest product on the farm, you're looking at about 160,000 Rand per hectare. That is your cost. And then it goes up to about 790,000 Rand. That is quite intensive if you look at the expenses that you've got. So it's quite a lot of stress, and if I must give any farmer any advice, then I would say go and learn from somebody. If you farm with your dad or with a farm manager, go work with him, not against him. You must learn from him. Take all that knowledge that you can get from him. Go to areas that is almost the same as your areas, climate-wise, the height above sea level, your chilling units, heat units. Go and have a look what is performing in that area and look also what is performing in your area. There's a reason why certain staff are working in your area and do your homework very, very well. Because if you listen to the wrong guy and you plant something, it can cost you a lot of money and at the end you can almost lose your farm or you can lose it. Always just believe in what you do. Do it to the best of your ability.
As you point out, running an intensive farming operation comes with a lot of stress, and I'm sure you're almost having to think 3 times, if not 4, before spending your money. What financial management practices have you found most effective in keeping your farm profitable and sustainable?
I've got a 3-year cash flow that I've got on the farm, and then we will do every 2 months, we will update that cash flow of us and see what is your genuine cost compared to what was in your estimation. And that is how we look at what is going on. You overspend some stuff. So we've got programs that we're working from. So you can work out beforehand what's your cost going to be on your irrigation, on your fertilizers, your spray materials, your bees, the twine that we're using for the hops. Every day we put in our mandate hours per hops or per plums, every variety. And I can tell you, listen, we are using 1 to 1.5 person per day per year on the hops and so much on that. So you have to be strict on that. And also your admin skills must be quite up to date to keep everything in place.
Perhaps a silly question because, no farmer is the same. And the practices that, a farmer in the Western Cape applies is completely different to that of a farmer in the Northern Cape or KwaZulu-Natal. But in your opinion, Dean, what are the most important qualities or skills, especially looking at how the agricultural sector is evolving and changing, those qualities and skills that you believe are essential for a successful farmer, especially for someone, I suppose, taking over a family farm?
Firstly, you must stay with the nature and you must read the season. I think that is the most important one. If you can read the season, if you've got a late season, an early season, was it drier the season, wetter? So I think that is definitely one of the biggest things. And then you also have to look at technologies. So as an example, we are also looking now into drone technology to show us which areas in the field are under stress and go in and try to get some leaf or ground samples out of that area and to fix it. So definitely you have to look at that. And The big thing is you have also to believe in yourself. That is the biggest skill that you must have, is you must believe in what you are doing. Otherwise, if you've got you think you can't do it and you're already on a losing area. So I would say you have to look at technology, look at how the season are going on, and look at your own abilities. And you also have to come out and go with other farmers. That's one of the reasons why a big standard that you also have to be a member of Organized Agricultural Federation. You get all of this information, and you've got guys that's fighting for you as a farmer, and you can focus on what you love. You can just farm. So to be a member of Agri West Kaap and Agri SA, they will do the fighting for us. So you have to have all that tools into place to make you a complete farmer, I would say.
That was, of course, Dean Barnard, hops and plums farmer based in George in the Western Cape. You can, of course, read more on this topic by visiting www.foodfromzansi.co.za. And that's a wrap. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. From me, Duncan Masiwa, our technical producer, Megan van der Vint, and the rest of #Team Food from Zanzi, thanks for listening.